Hello, and welcome to Results Washington's Reflection Series. This is an interview series that highlights continuous improvement efforts within the enterprise that are happening all across the state. We also spotlight that individual subject matter experts that are working on those efforts as they share their experience and their perspective throughout the project. We hear about their achievements, their barriers that they face, and lessons learned along the way. I'm Talia Mazzara. I'm a senior performance advisor with Results Washington. And today I am so excited to speak with Karen Hanan with Washington State's Arts Commission. And she is here to share about a project that expanded diversity within the public artist roster. So thank you so much for being here with us today, Karen.
Oh, it is my pleasure. Thank you, Talia, for the invitation.
Oh, yeah, I'm so excited to dive more into this. For anybody who's watching, we did hear an awesome presentation from Karen at our last September PPR that discussed, efforts with commissions all across Washington State and their community engagement efforts. And so we're going to dive a little bit deeper into this interview today to just give her some more time to talk about this awesome work that's being done with the Arts Commission. So let's kick it off by I'm going to ask you to tell our listeners just a little bit about you and what you do, and then what your commission is responsible for.
Well, thank you, Talia. So, as you said, my name's Karen Hanan, and I'm the executive director at ArtSWA, which is your Washington State Arts Commission. We're a relatively small commission, but we have a big purview in that we are the catalyst for the arts and the creative economy statewide. So we, have a wide portfolio of granting possibilities. We never have enough money, but we do grant what we can. And beyond that, we do a lot of programs such as Creative District Certification. We run the state's public art program, which we'll be delving into a little more in a moment. We have a Wellness Arts in the Military program, which is all about health and well-being through arts and creativity. We have a recently launched Tribal Cultural Affairs program. We run the state's Poet Laureate program, the Governor's Arts and Heritage Awards. I mean, all in all, we are a very busy agency. I have a fabulous team, and we do really important work. The creative economy is almost 10% of our state's economy. So it's a huge part. But arts and creativity play such a big role in health and well-being and just community vitality, bringing people together, connections and so on, that it's important on so many levels beyond economy. But, so we try and address it all. And, it's a big job, but we hope we're up to the task.
Oh, that sounds like amazing work. You mentioned so many things that I was not aware that you did. Out of curiosity, do you have, I know you have a website. I've checked that out. Do you have like a publication or what is your way of, I guess, marketing or sharing with folks? And sorry, this is a rogue question, but what's your way of marketing or sharing with folks everything you're involved with?
Yeah, I think arts.wa.gov is the website, and that's a really good place to start. And I always encourage people to sign up for, occasional communications with us or to engage with us via social media, which is also, I think, one of our main mechanisms for reaching folks. So, we're a very responsive agency, I think. So, for example, if you send us a question on the website, we will get back to you. And, the staff and the team are all available when people have looked at the website, for example, and they think, I'd like to know more about an arts and education grant that might be appropriate to me, or maybe I'd like to, know more about public art in my area. And people can access all of that, by the way, through our public art portal, which shows all 5,000 plus pieces of public art. But anyway, so I think the best connection would be around website, social media, and so on. And then, you can pick up the phone or email us and we will respond to you.
That is wonderful. And I literally just wrote down a note as a reminder to myself to sign up for your communications and to make sure I check you out on LinkedIn. Okay, so thank you. So tell us a little bit about the project with expanding diversity on the public artist roster.
Yeah, so the project is, as you say, our public artist roster. And this is essentially, Talia, our primary tool for choosing artists to work in the public arts sphere for the state. So we start 20 to 40 projects per year at the Arts Commission. And these are all projects funded through the capital budget. But there is there's a 0.5% for public art built into state-funded buildings. So, think K through 12 schools, think colleges, think universities, think state agencies. And once that 0.5% drops, then we, the Arts Commission, come in to help and to basically manage that program from beginning to end, working in partnership with the recipient of the funds. So part of that is the public artist roster. So as I said, that's our primary tool for choosing artists for these projects. And when I say we, I actually mean the committees that we work with. It's a very sort of locally emphasized control of these projects. So we can facilitate, we can advise, and all those things, but we do not tell people what art they are going to have created in their school or whatever it might be. Because each place is different. They know what they need.
Yeah.
So every 4 years, we open a large national call for qualified artists who can join our public artist roster. And this creates essentially a pre-qualified list of artists that then local committees can choose from. And it eliminates the need for a separate RFQ process for every project, which will be, way too laborious for everybody. So, as a state agency, we try and be as streamlined and as accessible as we can be. So in terms of this particular project, as we were looking at our 2021 open call for artists on the public art roster, we really wanted to improve a representation of artists around the state on the roster, because we realized that the representation was not as we wanted. It was very much skewing white and skewing male. So we identified 4 kind of key areas to focus on that we wanted to bring into better sort of focus and better presence on the roster. And those would have been BIPOC artists, then artists from the more rural parts of our state, central and eastern Washington, for example. We wanted more female artists, and we also wanted to capture artists who were transitioning from studio practice to larger scale public artwork. But they didn't necessarily have a big resume yet. But we wanted to capture them because we knew they could do it. And part of our role as the Arts Commission is to nurture the talents of people forward so that they can, play a bigger role for themselves in their livelihoods, in their work, and in the creative economy. So those were the 4 sort of key areas that we looked at as we were looking at the public artist roster and how we wanted to evolve it.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it because it is hard to emerge and to break out into that work in that industry. And I also know from a previous PPR we did months ago that related to behavioral health that art and creativity is known as a factor to improving like mental health, right? So I think that's awesome. It's like you're touching different spheres with this project that might not even be the intention, but it's helping so much. Now I know that you said that you noticed that the numbers were skewed a little off towards one group specifically, and you wanted to improve that. So that definitely is a problem you were trying to solve. Was there something that stood out at the time that you decided to do it that said, okay, this is the time. We need to address this now, or what was it that made now the time to work on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, the answer is that we at the agency and certainly within the public art team are always looking for process improvements. And we're always trying to analyze, our work in general to make sure that we're being as inclusive and as representative of Washington's diversity as possible. So, the team had already started looking at this. They knew that there was a bit of a problem here. So between the sort of the previous call and the 2021 one that we're addressing right now. The team had already started talking with artists, talking with constituents to try and find out, what were the barriers, if any, for getting on the roster? Why were you applying or not applying? Those kinds of things to try and identify the areas that then actually ended up in those 4 buckets that we wanted to focus on. So, that work had already been going underway. And then, so then we wanted to look at how to really sort of solve this problem. How do we change the makeup of the public artist roster? And I'm happy to carry on and talk about that right now, if this fits
Yeah,
in.
you are reading my mind because I was actually going to ask about the how, as a fellow practitioner of process improvement, I'm so curious to know, once you identified what you wanted to do, how did you go about making it known that, hey, we're opening this up, or because I would imagine after a while, folks may have gotten discouraged if they might have applied and not gotten through. So what were your steps to go and do all this?
Well, first of all, we really looked at, or the team delved into sort of every aspect of the program and the way we were conducting, the opening of the application. What was the application itself looking like? What might be the barriers there? So they really overhauled the guidelines and then really looked at the application form. And, they found quite a lot of things that were indeed barriers. I mean, number one, it used to be called a public artist roster competition. And the
Uh,
word competition was
mhm.
difficult,
Yeah,
for many populations. So it became a call instead, which was much more kind of a soft
inviting.
landing, as it were, much more inviting.
Yes,
Exactly. You don't have to compete.
right.
If you're qualified, we want to welcome you. So they revised the criteria, and we really de-emphasized the importance of large-scale works made in durable materials, which indeed is much of what the state's public art is: large, beautiful sculptural pieces, inside or outside. But they're very expensive to make, and when you're an emerging artist, you haven't necessarily got a big resume of those kinds of
Yeah.
things. So that was excluding people before. So we de-emphasized that, and we really emphasized an artist's technical skills and their ability to convey unique perspectives and things like that. So that was one of the things. We also decided to get away from asking for a resume. And instead of a resume, we asked for an about you statement.
Hmm.
And, we were finding that artists' resumes tend to really overemphasize education, exhibition history, all those kinds of things.
Yep.
And quite honestly, a lot of committees rarely read them. So, it was a lot of paperwork and wasn't really contributing. Whereas we quickly found that the about you statements are kind of fun to read. And I think they've given a more complete view of the artist as a person that you might want to work for, a person who might get what this particular committee is after. So, again, it sounds like a sort of small thing, but it was actually a big thing. And then we did, maybe more standard things like we revised all of the materials to use plain language. And we've done that across the agency as much as possible. And that is an ongoing thing. If we can say it in 6 words instead of 12, we will.
Yeah.
We translated the guidelines into Spanish. And then we also moved to a new application form and platform that was much more and is much more user-friendly. It has mobile device accessibility. It's much easier for the project managers who work the projects to use. There are a lot more filtering tools and so on. It also, in terms of the roster call and the panel process, it allowed committee members to review and score portfolios online. Before we were basically doing all of our reviews in person. So the online piece, again, provided more accessibility to a wider selection of panelists. And then, perhaps last but not least, we revised the sort of methodology around scoring to be more inclusive rather than exclusive.
Hmm.
So rather than sort of competitive scoring, which often will privilege artists working large scale with large budgets and so on, we basically said to the panelists, we need to include anyone who basically makes the case that they are qualified to create art for public places.
Mhm.
So, all of these things made a huge difference, and we saw that in some of the statistics. statistics that we talked about at the PPR, and obviously we'll maybe have a chance to go into those today. But you also asked about outreach and how we were able to sort of reach people who might have dropped off the radar or maybe were never on our radar. So we partnered with some of our trusted partners like Artist Trust, that essentially funds individual artists. So we asked them to provide sort of mentorship and opportunities for education around public art, to help sort of move them into the public art sphere. So they were able to give things like application and portfolio advice. And we did find artists like learning from other artists who'd been there, done that. So that was very successful. We also had in-person workshops about the roster. We went to the Artists of Color Expo, for example, in both Seattle and Spokane, and we're a presence there. So people could come and talk to the team individually. And then we contacted a large network of peers through throughout the state, including our tribal connections, through community organizations, direct emails, social media. I mean, you name it, we pretty much used it. And, I think the end results spoke for themselves.
I would imagine this has to be life-changing for some people, just because I know for a fact that for your first time breaking into a gallery, they want to see that you have other gallery experience, or they want to see that you've done juried shows or juried contests. And so this is a huge opportunity that you all are extending to the people that you approve. So I think that has to be life-changing for a lot of people. And I just also want to say that for anybody watching this is a great example of being proactive and integrating that DEI lens in your work, your daily work, because this just seems like from here on out, or from when you launch the project, that DEI is like officially a part of what you do, and it's not going to be incorporated as a reaction to a problem down the line, but it's really something you intentionally sat back and said, okay, let's look at this application, let's make it more accessible. It's so beautifully done, the way you've integrated lean into it. I can see the wastes that you eliminated, and then the way that you're bringing in, a more equitable lens. I think this is awesome. So what would you say is the next step in your project, or your commission's plan with this work?
Well, given the sort of the success of the changes, I think we want to continue building on that success. I mean, just a few statistics. We received a record number of applications as a result of the changes we made. So I think 2021 it was more than 600 applications, which was a lot more than we'd had before. And, as a
Job
result,
well done.
well, yeah, applause to my team. The size of the roster went from 267 to 476,
Wow.
because we realized, there wasn't really a reason to have a cap. If you're qualified, you should be on the roster. And some of it actually relates to what you just said there, Talia, about making this part of an opportunity for an artist. Because if they get on a public art roster at the state level, that is going to say something to other employers, to other galleries, or whoever. They're on the state public art roster, so they must have a lot going for them. So, the size of the roster has been very successfully expanded. We increased numbers of artists from all of our bucket areas, whether
That's what I wanted to get into. You mentioned some really impressive statistics at the PPR. Could you give us some of those?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So overall, I think roughly 75% of our applicants now get onto the roster, which is a lot more than before. In this particular case, the number of artists who came from Eastern or Central Washington went from 14 at the previous call to 35. And in fact, the representation nearly doubled from all areas of Washington state. The BIPOC artists represented on the roster went from 56 to 148. Veteran artists went from 7 to 11.
Mhm.
Disabled artists went from just 3 in 2018 to 17. Excuse me, to 23. 17 of them were Washington based.
Wow.
And non-binary artists went from 1 to 16.
Wow.
And all of these statistics continue today, and they're trending in the right direction. So, overall, I think, the roster changes has been so successful. But, this job is never done, and we're constantly on it, constantly looking at it. And, the team is so committed to making sure that ultimately we do, represent the diversity of Washington State in everything we do. And, it allows the communities we work with to find the best artists that work for them, but that maybe represent them. There's not really a downside to this particular to this particular project.
No, I can't hear one at all. It's it sounds exciting. It sounds amazing. Out of curiosity, you mentioned with the numbers that you were just giving us, you mentioned you had specific number counted for the Washington artists. So that tells me that you're accepting folks from out of state. Is that right?
Yes, we do. We actually accept people from all around the country and worldwide. And the reason for that people might be a little surprised at that. More than 50% of the roster is Washington-based artists. But, if you are, for example, the University of Washington, you have enormous projects sometimes, and you want to have a roster that perhaps reflects the world-class art collection you are building.
Yeah.
So that's one reason we want to have a really diverse group of artists available for our committees to choose from. But also we want to keep the door open for our artists to be included in Oregon's roster or
Mhm.
California's roster. And if we start slamming the door and saying
Reciprocity.
only Washington,
Yeah.
that is exactly what will happen. We do not want that. We want our artists to be available and to be successful wherever they choose to apply. So, that reciprocity you've mentioned is really important.
Ah, very good. Very good. I just had another question and then it slipped my mind.
You did
Um,
mention next steps, and I could sort of just address that while you're
yeah,
thinking about that
yeah.
question. So first of all, for anybody listening, the artists on the current roster are there until August of 2025. So that means that we will launch the next roster call in probably May of 2025. So arts.wa.gov is the website. So that's where people should go, to sign up, to keep, to maybe be in touch with our Art in Public Places team. But if they're interested, that's when it will open again. So next steps also, I think, involve continuous reviewing of our guidelines and our application. And we've already begun outreach efforts to sort of spread word about the public artist roster. And that includes things like last month, the Serving Those Who Served conference was over in Spokane.
Mhm.
So we presented to veterans, around opportunities like the public artist roster to see if we can increase the number of veterans on the roster.
Awesome.
We're also hosting public art workshops for tribal artists, and we're working with the Puyallup tribe, for example. And our tribal cultural affairs program, of course, is helping to build those relationships. And we're sort of planning more. I mean, I think, again, the team doesn't stop thinking about this. So next steps are constant improvement, constant analysis, and we'll see what the next roster does. That will be very interesting. If our numbers, and I hope, in a year or two, I'll come back and do this again, and I'll be able to tell you, yes, the numbers went up in all the right places.
Yeah.
So, that's what we're hoping for.
Oh, I imagine they will. I imagine you'll have to expand your staff at some point because it seems like you're just doing more and more.
Yes, yes, we definitely need more staff. Absolutely, all the time. We have expanded the public art team quite considerably. When I started, we had 4, I think, and we're now, I believe, we're at 12.
Oh,
But it's an enormous state. There's 5,000 pieces of art, 40 projects a year, and things don't get done in a year. So
yeah.
the team is always juggling probably way too many projects, but they're a committed bunch and doing an incredible job.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I think my last question for you is in reference to what is the big challenge, the biggest challenge, if any, that you've faced during this improvement effort? And if you can think of one, what would you have done differently?
Yeah, good. It's a good question. I think, staff capacity is something you actually always have to look at
Mhm.
when you're making any kind of changes. And probably our team would say that maybe we were a little over ambitious. For example, when we set up, all kinds of filtering options on the platform that we use, it turned out that this was now going to require an awful lot of work on the back end that
Mm.
could have maybe been automated through the application form. We know that now, so that will change in the future. But staff capacity was then sort of sidelined to have to go and deal with that kind of thing. So I think planning that is important. I also think that big changes require small steps. So I mentioned the fact that between sort of the previous roster call and the one in 2000, that came in 2021, they had done a lot of sort of work trying to figure out and talk to artists and so on. So I think that part of the process was really important. And then process improvement takes time. It does not happen overnight.
Mm-mm.
Hence we need to give ourselves the grace to take time. We cannot change it overnight, but we can have that long view. And I think that is critical. And then also taking action is critical. Long view, it's going to take a while, but that doesn't mean to say we are not stepping towards a brighter future.
Absolutely. Yeah, they say 30% change is better today than 100% tomorrow or 100% never, right? So you definitely
Exactly.
want to just get started and take baby steps. And so what I heard you say in the beginning was you realized that there was some work on the back end of the application process that created more work. So that's a good point because I know there's a lot of other agencies, folks that may be listening that in some of the process improvements that you do, you're working with system changes and that's a good lesson learned is to think about if there is any possibility on the back end to try to figure out the logic to where it can automate certain things. And one question can lead to another, which can lead to another, which would minimize back and forth between the staff and the applicant. Yeah.
Yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
I see that. I see that. Well, that's all I have for you today. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your dedication to the arts community, your team's dedication. They sound amazing. I would love to meet them one day. I just hope to hear more about you all. And I'm definitely going to be checking out your website so I can stay up to date with any events that you all put on or that you attend. And I would encourage anybody who's watching this to go take a look at the website because they just have a lot going on, as you heard today, and it's just great work. So thank you so much for being with us today, Karen.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure, Talia. Thanks for letting me talk about our work. As you say, I'm pretty passionate about it.
Mhm.
It makes a difference. So arts.wa.gov, I'm sounding like a political candidate or
Oh,
something at this point, right? I am the biggest cheerleader for the agency and for the work that we do because it's important on so many levels and it's fun.
it is fun, and your dedication and passion shines through. And if it's not coming from the top of a commission or the top of an agency, then that's a problem. So I really love to see a leader of a commission or an agency really have that passion to, set the stage and set the standard. And I think that you all obviously you all operate with a standard of excellence. And to Washingtonians and artists, I say thank you. You all are wonderful.
Thank you, Talia. Much appreciated.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.